The desert carried the color of old gold beneath a bruised sky, its horizon trembling with the promise of rain. A single rider moved through that stillness, Colton McRae, age 30, a broad-shouldered cowboy whose silence felt older than the land itself. His horse's hooves fell in a rhythm that matched the pulse of the earth, and the wind seemed to whisper to him as it wound through the canyons. He had long ago given up on belonging anywhere. The world had taken too much and left him with dust, a rifle, and a conscience that wouldn't die. As the sun sank, thunder grumbled beyond the dunes. Lightning carved the horizon in white veins. He tilted his hat lower, but something, a cry carried by the wind, made him pull the reins sharply. Through the curtain of rain, he saw movement, a horse fleeing into the storm and a figure collapsed beside a dry wash. He rode hard, water stinging his eyes, until he reached her. She was half-conscious, her long black hair plastered to her cheeks, her breathing shallow. Her arm was torn, and blood mixed with rain on her skin. Even in the harsh light, her beauty struck him, not the delicate kind of beauty men spoke of, but the fierce kind that came from endurance. Aileen Tacoma, age 20, daughter of the desert, child of the Tacoma tribe. Colton knelt, his rough hands trembling as he checked her pulse. "Stay with me," he said, though he didn't expect her to answer. Her lashes fluttered, and she whispered something in a tongue older than English, then fell silent. He gathered her into his arms, the storm howling like a beast around them, and carried her to his horse. By the time they reached his cabin, night had swallowed the desert. The wooden walls creaked under the wind's assault. He laid her on his bed, lit a lantern, and worked in silence, washing the wound, wrapping it tight. She stirred once, her eyes flashing open, wild with confusion. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe here." She looked at him with mistrust and something like pride. "Why help me?" she asked, voice faint but steady. "Because no one else was going to," he said simply. For a long moment she studied him, then drifted back into sleep. The storm raged until dawn. He dozed in a chair by the fire, half listening to the wind batter the walls. When morning came, it brought silence, a clean kind, heavy and strange after so much noise. He brewed coffee, the scent filling the small cabin. When she woke, she sat up too fast, grimacing from pain. "You shouldn't move," he said. She frowned. "My tribe, they'll think I'm dead." "Not yet," he replied, handing her a tin cup of water. For a while, she watched him without speaking, taking in the scar along his jaw, the worn coat, the quiet way he moved. "You're from Red Creek," she said finally. "Your people hate mine." He met her gaze. "I'm not much of a people man these days." A flicker of something softened her face, curiosity, maybe. The silence between them thickened, not with hostility but with the strangeness of two worlds forced into one room. Outside, the desert still steamed from the rain. Inside, two strangers sat by a crackling fire, each pretending they weren't staring at the other. That night, as he tended the flames, she spoke again, voice low and distant. "My people live by the rhythm of the land," she said. "Your town looks only to the sky. Can the two ever understand each other?" He looked into the fire before answering. "Maybe not. But maybe understanding's overrated. You don't need to speak the same language to mean the same thing." Their eyes met. A silence bloomed between them that wasn't empty. When their hands brushed, just a passing moment as he handed her a bowl of soup, it felt like the air had changed shape. She pulled her hand back quickly, her breath catching. Outside, the storm had cleared, leaving a million stars to stare down at them. Inside, the world felt smaller, quieter, and somehow infinitely more alive. By morning, the desert was bright again, gold as wheat. Aileen insisted she could travel. "My father worries," she said, fastening her cloak. "Chief Tacoma doesn't forgive those who wander far." Colton saddled her horse in silence. "The path east will take you home." She hesitated before mounting. "If we meet again, it will not be as friends," she said softly. He smiled, sad and knowing. Then may your arrow miss, and my bullet never find its mark. Something flickered in her eyes, respect, perhaps, or sorrow. Then she rode away, a streak of turquoise against the endless sand. He stood watching until she vanished into the horizon, leaving him alone with the silence once more. When Aelin returned to her tribe, the camp greeted her with relief that quickly soured to suspicion. Chief Tacoma, a man carved from both wisdom and pride, looked her over. "You crossed into their land," he said. "You lived among them." "I lived with the desert," she replied. "It was the storm that saved me." But in her heart, she knew it wasn't the storm. It was the man whose eyes had seen her not as an enemy but as a soul. In Red Creek, whispers spread like tumbleweeds. "McRae's gone soft," the saloon men muttered. "Taking in a savage girl? He'll bring trouble on us all." Colton ignored them. Yet every evening, he found himself riding to the valley where the land dipped low between the town and the tribal border, as though the desert itself was waiting for her return. And one evening she did. She appeared like a mirage through the shimmering heat. Neither spoke when they met, but the relief in her eyes said everything. The valley became their sanctuary, her laughter scattering the tension from his shoulders, his stories making her smile when she didn't want to. They met in secret, always under the watch of stars, sharing the kind of quiet that only two lonely people could understand. He showed her how to play the harmonica, the tune soft and yearning. She showed him how to dance barefoot in the dust, her movements fluid as wind. In those moments the world outside, the hatred, the history, ceased to exist. But joy in the Wild West never stayed hidden for long. One night, as twilight bled into darkness, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the valley. Aelin's face went pale. "Scouts," she whispered. "If they find us, they'll kill you." Colton reached for her hand. "Then the desert will keep our secret." They crouched among the rocks, breath held as riders passed, dark silhouettes against the starlit sand. When the danger was gone, she turned to him, her eyes wet with something that wasn't quite fear. "Why do you risk this?" she asked. He shrugged, voice low. "Because peace has to start somewhere. Might as well start here." The wind carried her laughter away, but her gaze lingered, full of unspoken words. Days passed. Rumors turned to threat. Someone was stealing cattle, wagons burned in the night, and both the tribe and the town pointed fingers. Beneath it all, one man's greed fanned the flames. Bill Hurston, the outlaw leader who thrived on chaos. He wanted gold, land, and power. Peace didn't serve him. When Hurston's gang struck, they struck hard. Smoke rose over the plains, and the sky filled with fire. The tribe believed Red Creek was attacking. The town believed the tribe had gone to war. Amid the confusion, Aelin rode out with her warriors while Colton rallied the townsmen who still trusted him. They met in the valley again, not as lovers this time, but as soldiers standing on the same ground. "Stay back," she warned. He shook his head. "Not this time." The desert became a battlefield. Gunfire cracked like thunder, arrows flew like sparks. Dust and smoke swallowed the light, and the air reeked of iron and sweat. Aelin fought with the grace of someone born to defend, her bow singing through the chaos. Colton fought beside her, each covering the other as if they shared one heartbeat. When Hurston's men broke toward the cliffs, he followed. The outlaw turned, sneering, his revolver aimed squarely at Aelin. "Should have let her die in that storm, cowboy," he spat. Colton charged, slamming into him. The two men crashed to the ground, trading blows until the world narrowed to fists and fury. Hurston drew a knife, the blade flashing, but before he could strike, an arrow whistled through the air and buried itself in his arm. He staggered, cursed, and slipped backward off the cliff's edge. The canyon swallowed him whole. Silence spread like dawn. The battle slowed, then stopped. The tribesmen and the townsfolk stared across the field at one another, exhausted, bloodied, but alive. Chief Tacoma rode forward, his voice ringing clear over the quiet. "Today I have seen a white man fight not for gold, not for power, but for the honor of this land." Colton McRae, you are no longer a stranger. You are my daughter's, and my people's, son." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of centuries unspoken. Colton turned toward Aylin. Her eyes shone with tears she didn't try to hide. In the days that followed, Red Creek and the Tacoma tribe built something new together. They cleared the ashes, shared their food, and laid stones where blood had once soaked the ground. On the evening when peace was declared, the valley filled with light, lanterns strung between the church and the teepee grounds, drums beating like hearts remembering how to hope again. Aylin appeared in her turquoise dress, feathers shimmering in the firelight. Colton waited at the center, wearing his black coat, freshly dusted but still smelling faintly of smoke and saddle leather. She walked to him slowly, each step a bridge across history. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You saved my tribe. Now accept me as your wife." The crowd fell silent. He looked at her for a long, unbroken moment, then smiled, a small, tired smile that carried the weight of everything they'd endured. "I found love in the desert," he said. "And now that love has found a home." Cheers rose like thunder, this time joyful. The chief placed his hand on their heads, the mayor raised a glass, and for the first time, Red Creek and the Tacoma tribe shared one song. Later, as the stars burned above them, Aylin and Colton stood hand in hand, watching the sky turn gold at the edges. The world had changed quietly, without fanfare, through love that refused to bow to fear. And in that hush before dawn, the desert itself seemed to exhale, as though it, too, had been waiting for this. If you listened closely, the wind almost sounded like a promise, soft, eternal, and alive. Years passed, and the cabin became home. Then came their daughter, Liana, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's steady hands. At her birth, Red Creek and the Tacoma tribe gathered to celebrate, not for war, but for life. She laughed across the sand, reaching for sunlight. Aylin lifted Liana. "You are the bridge between worlds," she whispered. Colton held them both. "And the heart of it all," he said. The desert seemed to join in the joy as townsfolk and tribal members danced together. That night, Aylin rested in Colton's arms, and Liana slept in her mother's arms, with Colton holding both of them tightly in his own embrace. "We've built something that will last," she whispered. "Love built this," he said. Under the golden sky, the cowboy, the desert princess, and their daughter, lifted in her mother's arms, walked toward a horizon of hope, peace, and unity.